Welcome back to our study. This week we've been looking at God in control. And last time we took a look at God's sovereign watch, how he sees everything. He is in control because he sees all. There's nothing hidden. Even the hearts of people he knows. He knows the thoughts before they're formed. He knows everything. And so today we're going to be looking at the sovereign purpose of God. So not only does God see everything, but he has a purpose for all things. We see this in the book of Proverbs in 16:4. The Lord has made everything for its purpose, even the wicked for the day of trouble. So in all his works, God seeks the glory of his name and the manifestation of his attributes. Though he needs nothing, he purposes everything to glorify him, either willingly or unwillingly. Every creature serves as a reminder of its creator. So God has created all things, everything he's made, to serve with a purpose. Everything has a purpose. Every situation, every event is done purposeful. There's nothing on this earth that doesn't have a purpose, or a situation that doesn't serve a purpose. Everything is designed to give glory to God. So that's what we see, is that glorification of God happening. And like I said, either willingly or unwillingly, whether they want to glorify God or not, if they're rational creatures like humans who can try to disobey and rebel against God, God still uses that, has a purpose for it. So despite the rebellion of men and devils, God's glory stays intact. Those who refuse to honor God willingly will still serve his glory, though they display his justice. I can't read. Can't read my notes. His glory through the display of his justice and wrath. So that's how they glorify God. And that's how they honor, how God will be honored, because his wrath and justice will be poured out on him. And therefore, you will glorify God whether you like it or not. So ultimately, Satan glorifies God because he will be an instrument by which God's wrath is poured out on. So now hell itself will eternally testify to God's righteousness, while heaven's praises will celebrate his holiness. Every creature and event reflects God's majesty and power, and every proud evildoer will be a lasting testimony to his justice. So whether that's like, well, how could hell glorify God? Doesn't it show that, it does, because that is God's justice being meted out. And then heaven obviously shows God's goodness, his mercy, his grace, all those things. And so both those serve a purpose. They're not without purpose. That's what we're saying. And so God is in control. He sovereignly watches, and he has a sovereign purpose over all things. So we see that here. The Lord has made everything for its purpose. Now, Proverbs 20:12, the hearing ear, and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both. And so God crafted every part of our bodies, every body part, as a purpose. Many skeptics throughout history have turned from atheism when they've studied the eye, which is pretty interesting. Its complex design, the way it comes together, really showcases God's wisdom and purpose. Through our ears, we experience fellowship with each other because we talk with one another. We communicate often, a lot of times through conversation. We receive God's truth. We gain life-giving instruction and warnings. Now, that's not the only way, because we get that from the eye as well, but the ears are helpful as well because they do help a lot of stuff. And there is a disadvantage for those who are deaf. They have to learn to adapt and to work in a world that is basically hearing, that produces sound where they cannot perceive it. So they're missing that perception. That means they have to compensate some other way. But there is a purpose for the ear, right? The ear hears sound, and it's useful. There's no doubt about that. Same thing with an eye. If you can't see, then you're going to have to compensate some other way, usually by hearing. And sometimes those senses will be more attuned and more effective. The other ones will kind of compensate. But there's a purpose behind, we have to say there's purpose behind the eye. There's purpose behind the ear. If they're there and working, then it benefits the person. And so all these things, we see that God has a sovereign purpose. So everything has a purpose. And then we see here the specific, the hearing eye, seeing eye. God has made them both. He made them both for a reason. Didn't just create them just for the fun of it and say, hey, this would be a cool thing to do. God had a purpose behind all of those. And so God's sovereignty extends to the purpose of everything. Now, we're also going to see that God has a plan, and we'll look at that next time.